Hey there, my name is Drew Brashler, and this week I'm going to be moving my PA. I've changed a little bit since then. This was recorded about 4 years ago while I was working at a church in Texas called the Avenue Church in Waxahachie, Texas. And we had a PA deployment that was incorrect for the room. When the room was originally built, it was a correct placement. But then later, some people decided to extend the stage forward and make a rounded stage on the front of the stage. Now this applied some issues because now the singers were singing in front of the PA. And if you've ever had a singer and vocal mic in front of the PA, the number one issue that you're going to run into is feedback. Because now that microphone is in front of the PA that's amplifying that microphone. And that's how we get feedback. And so anytime my vocalists were out on stage, the pastor was talking on a headset or a lav or a handheld for an announcement. All of those situations, I had issues with feedback. It was always something that I was constantly having problems with. And here's some reasons why when you check out the actual positioning of this PA. This is a Meyer M1D array along with a Meyer M1D sub. So we have 12 boxes on either side, so it goes all the way down there. And then we have 6 boxes of M1D sub, all Meyer. We have a Galileo processor sitting backstage, and this is our PA that we run. This PA here actually was installed before they extended this stage. So where it is currently in the room is actually too far behind the stage. And what happens with that is when my pastors or my band is out on stage, they are in front of the PA. So that's not good. You can imagine if you're trying to mix and you have a whole lot of volume going into your microphones, well, that's feedback. So because this PA is so far upstage in comparison to where my pastor is, in comparison to where my vocalists are, I get a lot of feedback very easily. So it's really hard to push the vocals to the spot where I really, really want them to be sitting. All right, this is the top box of our Meyer M1D array, and this points directly at that sound cloud that's right there. And obviously we don't have anyone sitting up on a balcony, so we really don't need this pointed this high. But this line array is just starting out pointing out too high. So it is hitting this lip, and there is a little bit of reflections that come off of this, as that is a hard surface. It is not an acoustic sound cloud, it is just a facade. The other thing that I want to show you guys is I am sitting right here at the front of the PA, and if we look down, that is where my stage is. So we can see the other PA on the other side, right there. And you can see how far forward our stage is in comparison to where the PA is. So we can see the PA right here, and that's about in line with right here. So the original stage, and you can see the floor pocket right there, the original stage ended right here. And so you can see how much they extended the stage out, and there is a center fill right there. And that center fill happens to put out a ton of energy right here where the pastor speaks. So this mic stand that's right there on stage is actually where our pastors speak from. There's a little teaching table that goes right here. And so they speak from right there, and that is in direct line of that center fill. So I'm now out pretty close to front of house. So front of house is right there. The other reason that we need to move this PA is, as you can probably tell right now, it is hung way too wide. So this PA right there really should be about 10 feet into about right here. And same with the other side. Right there needs to be about right there, because this is too wide of a stereo spectrum. So what ends up happening is the mix for the stereo portion, because the PA is so wide, it actually does not give a great stereo image to anyone unless they are dead center of the room, which is a big problem, because if we want to pan anything, the only people that are going to hear that panning are the people in the center. And that little portion with a PA that's this wide is very, very small. So by getting those in closer, you're kind of opening up that stereo width of seats that can actually hear it. The other thing is we can see how close this PA is to that wall. And so in this room, this was placed way too wide. So for those of you wondering how this thing is actually rigged, it is rigged with double unistrut connected directly to the I-beams. And so we're gonna end up taking this whole array down and the whole sub-array down, and then we're gonna end up reusing this unistrut over one set of beams. So these beams are every 10 feet, so we'll end up moving it, and it's actually gonna hang pretty much right where this light canister is right here. We don't use those anymore. They're unplugged, and I've actually never seen them turned on. So we're gonna end up spanning between this I-beam and that I-beam, and it will end up sitting about right where my finger is, right there in the relative area of our truss grid. So here's a great angle of this PA and where the stage ends up being. So obviously that's where my pastor is, and that's where the PA is. So it definitely gets the stage, and I actually took some SMAART measurements, and I want to show you guys that next. This is basically showing us from 20 hertz all the way up to 20 kilohertz what the PA is doing. Now, these peaks and valleys that are happening, that is because we didn't have a great measurement here. So this is coherence inside of SMAART. And this is basically showing us how good this measurement is. And so, for instance, right here, this is really bad coherence. So the coherence is close to 0, especially right here. This is close to 0. So in reference to this guy, if this coherence was all the way up to the top and close to 100%, that would mean that this was a good measurement. Because this is low, it's a bad measurement. So this dip that's happening right here is not actually occurring. So if I ended up taking another measurement, moving slightly to the left or the right by a couple feet, and taking another measurement, I could then average them together, and then I would bring up my coherence closer to 0, closer to 100%, and then this little valley that's happening right here would kind of disappear. So I'm not wanting to get too much into this, but what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna turn off coherence, and I'm wanting to show you my measurement from center stage. So the yellow is my center stage measurement, okay? So we can see that the subwoofers are louder, and that is obvious because the center of the stage, right underneath, right down here, I have four subwoofers underneath the stage. So the vocalists that would be standing above that would have a ton of subs, which we can definitely see. But this right here, this very high rise that's happening, that is at 2K. And that is a very big peak that we're not getting back here at front of house. So all of this sound is hitting my center stage spot, okay? And then I'm going to turn on stage right and stage left. Now remember, the red line is front of house. So the red is what front of house is getting. The yellow, teal, and green lines are our measurements from stage. And so you can see that all of them have this boost here, and white has, which is my stage left measurement, has a ton of, what is that? That's about 7K and 8K that we're not actually getting down here at front of house. So all of this energy right here and all of this energy right here are actually my two problem frequencies that I have all of my vocals feeding back on. Every time I push the vocals really hot, I get a feedback at 2K. If I have a person standing on stage left, every time I get a piece of feedback at 7.5K. So both of those two spots are big problem frequencies for me. And that is because everyone on stage is in front of the PA. So that is why we're planning on moving it. Now, because we were actually changing the position and the rigging of the PA, I brought in not only a structural engineer, but I also hired in a company that has insurance for changing the position of rigging. Now, because I don't want to have the liability of that PA being hung incorrectly, that's why I hired a company as well as a structural engineer to verify the placement of the PA was going to be okay with the rigging of the building and the roof structure that we had. So anytime that you're changing a PA position, especially if it's hung from the ceiling, please bring in some professionals, even if you know how to do it. I've been hanging PAs for years. I know how to do it. I know how to wrap the steel correctly, but even then, I still want to hire a professional to verify the placement as well as the rigging and weight limitations of that roof. So with all that being said, I hired E2I Designs with my friend Evan, and Evan helped me do all of the PA movement. And there was a couple difficulties that we ended up coming into during this change. Now, once we had all of the speakers down, the next thing that we needed to do was test all of the components of those speakers to make sure that they were functioning the way that they should. And we actually had a bunch of issues with some of these older speakers. Now, this was the downside of reutilizing an old system. This had been installed in the church, and it was previously a used rig before the church purchased it. So there was a lot of years of use on this PA. So when we started testing these components using Rational Acoustics SMAART Suite, we found that some of the tweeters were blown, or some of the amplifiers were bad, or some of the woofers were bad. It was very interesting finding out that some of the components were indeed wrong on the installation. And then the other thing that was really fun about this is the power was wired directly into the units, directly from the circuit breaker, which is fine. However, the PA never shut off, ever, unless power to the building was interrupted, which means that this PA was turned on for years. And one thing that we found out is that some of the power supplies, once we disconnected the power from those speakers, that they did not actually turn back on. Very fascinating. And so the PA was fully functional, except 2 boxes, before we actually took all of this stuff down. And then once we actually unplugged everything and brought it down to the ground and then plugged it in the same way, we had actually a bunch of boxes fail because of their power supplies. So luckily I had some extra boxes and some extra components. So at the end, we ended up with 10 speakers per side instead of the bigger PA that we had before we actually did this. So here is Evan actually testing those speakers with SMAART, and we can see the curve line that we are looking for all of these speakers. And we can see that some of them are bad. All right, so currently what we're doing here is we're measuring every speaker with SMAART. And that's what it's supposed to look like. And then this one, this green one, is one that doesn't have one of the low frequency drivers working. And this one is one that has the high frequency not working. So that's what we're doing, is we're just testing all of our speakers. All right, here's the update. Got 10 boxes of the M1Ds, then we got 5 boxes of the sub, and then we got our side fill. We are going to be removing that center fill completely as the new position of the PA, moving from there to here, significantly better as far as bleed goes for the front. So I'm very happy so far. All right, so what we're currently doing is we are getting the side fill, which is currently behind that truss, it's just right up there. But anyway, we're trying to get that side fill dialed in with the main PA. So we have the PA going, we have the subs that are tucked underneath behind it, and we have that side fill. And what we're doing is we're just getting volume set on the side fill to get the localization good, so that when we're listening to it, it doesn't sound like it's coming from here. It sounds like it's coming from kind of in between. And then the other thing is this side fill is a little bit brighter than the PA, so we're just going to knock the brightness down of that a little bit. But man, you can see how much better this hang is in comparison to, remember when our PA was hung there in comparison. So about 10 feet forward, which is perfect. We did end up running into some conduit on the other side, which held us back from being able to bring it in forward more. So, but so far so good. So if you can remember, our PA was spanning between these two roof trusses right here. So it was hanging about right here. So I actually wouldn't have been able to get my lift into right here because we would have been in the PA. And if we remember, it was pretty much in line right across here is where it was at. And my vocalists are singing right here on this front line. So now I'm gonna move over on my lift here. So we can see that we have shifted this PA significantly forward. It is about 10 feet farther forward and about 10 feet more center stage, which is great. So because we did have to hang less boxes, we only ended up with 5 subwoofers on each side and our 10 M1Ds hanging in that row. And so we did push far pretty forward, so this first box is able to get our chairs that sit here in the front row, which is great. And it's actually perfect for the singers. It does not have much throw onto the stage, which is great. So we also have this outfill that's right here that covers this whole section, which is outside of the PA throw. So all of this area that's in here is a little bit outside of the HF horn on this part. So once you're in this spot, we're able to get covered by our side fill, and then as we scoot this way in the PA, it feels really nice. So here's another angle that kind of shows us where our subs are. Unfortunately, we were wanting to hang these just in a straight grid, just for aesthetics reasons, and the curvature of those subs don't really do much for us in this room. But the brackets didn't allow it. But if you remember, this first box was actually all the way up here, which was shooting into this sound cloud, which was not great. So now this is hitting, that first box is hitting about 7 feet up, so we make sure that we have a good amount of coverage at front house, and then the banana shape of our curvature gets us all the way down to our front rows. So very happy with this.
And I bet some of you guys are wondering, well, why didn't we just put in a new PA? Well, new PAs for larger rooms are 1, very expensive, and 2, we still had a little bit of life left out of this PA, and then 3, the church was planning an expansion and planning to rebuild some of this room, which it now has been rebuilt. So if you go to the Avenue Church now, this day, well, you'll actually have a completely different PA and a different looking room than what it was 4 years ago. Now, as I'm sitting here looking at this old tweeter that I pulled out, this is actually a functioning tweeter that we had an extra one of something that we ended up throwing away. Now, the date code on this actually says June 30th of 2005. So that can tell you how old this PA actually was. But this PA movement was essential for us because 1, it was way too wide, and obviously when you have a stereo image that's too wide, you're not going to have a great coverage in your main room like that. It's too wide, and with that downfill in the center, basically covering the front edge of the stage, that was a big issue. And so this redeployment of the PA really gave new life to the room and a great addition to better sound of that room. We were able to completely remove that center downfill, and then we just had the outfills to cover the far outsides of the room, and then the rest of the room was really well covered with the rest of the PA with the way that it was hung. Now, because we did find that there was some conduit in the way, I wasn't able to place it as far forward as I was wanting. The bringing it down in height was very good because then I was able to get that sound going right into that sound cloud that would be bouncing off and going right to the stage. And I was able to get that speaker underneath that sound cloud so there wasn't as much reflection directly off of that sound cloud, which was very good. And the very last thing is the actual curvature of the PA is more correct for the throw and distance and coverage for that room now. So I hope this video was kind of fun for you guys to see. This was something that I did, 4 years ago, and I hadn't really put together all the footage in a while, and so today I did, and I figured you guys would just love to see a PA redeployment as far as why and how we did it. Now, if you do happen to have an old PA that maybe needs some new tender love or a complete redeployment of a new system, then E2I Designs would be one place that I would look. Just go find a qualified system designer and integrator to find the right price point for your church or venue, and they will be able to recommend the correct gear for your room and venue and get you sounding great with a new PA. Now again, I hope this video was helpful for you. If you do happen to have any questions or there's a video that you're hoping that I would make on really any production equipment that's out there, please post that in the comments section down below, as I'm always reading through those comments to find videos that are gonna be helpful for you. If you haven't already, make sure to check out my website at drewbrashler.com, where I have a whole bunch of articles, tips, and tricks. Otherwise, I hope you have a great day.